simple mistake let the most notorious serial killer in American history escape justice.
Welcome to WatchMojo, and today we're counting down our picks for the biggest mistakes that damaged the investigations into unsolved cases.
Right then and there, the police investigation was tainted.
Number 10, Jack the Ripper case. Circulated inaccurate suspect sketches. It's been over 135 years since Jack the Ripper stalked the streets of London's Whitechapel district, but the infamous murderer continues to enthrall the public.
In the autumn of 1888, the East End of London lived in terror.
Beginning in August 1888, the killer claimed 5 lives in a vicious spree that is still widely discussed and debated. As publicity mounted about the killings, police struggled under mounting pressure from the press.
They were under a lot of pressure to solve these cases, identify this individual.
In an attempt to elicit help from the public, police made a critical error when they allowed the press to publish artist renderings of the killer. Unfortunately, the sketches were not based on witness descriptions. They were simply the artist's interpretation of how a deranged killer may look. The drawings resulted in a flood of useless tips, further straining the already overwhelmed detectives.
Even at the time of the murders, he was becoming mythology. And then you start getting the man with the top hat and the cape and the little bag, so he's almost being given a supervillain image that people can latch onto.
Number 9, the murders of James Dieter and Tim IDzik. Accidental death ruling delayed investigation. James Dieter and Tim IDzik worked at a paper recycling plant in Sherwood Park, Alberta, Canada. On October 1, 1994, both men were found unresponsive near a machine they were repairing earlier that day.
2 men, James Dieter and Tim IDzik, are found lying in a pool of blood. They have been dead for several hours.
Officers did not suspect foul play. They assumed the men died in a work-related accident and passed the case to Occupational Health and Safety. Autopsies conducted 2 days later revealed both men were murdered. Investigators scrambled to recover from the 36 hours they lost.
By this time, the crime scene was completely destroyed, and crucial evidence, if there was any, is gone.
I've spoken to the investigators, and they assure me that the loss of the crime scene, though it was damaging to the case, was not a critical factor in the case.
However, they struggled to collect viable evidence since the crime scene had not been secured. An arrest was eventually made. Unfortunately, the prosecutor further fumbled the case by misrepresenting evidence.
The police and the prosecution used this letter to help keep Dix in jail without bail for almost 2 years. But guess what? It was a fake, written by the Mounties to entrap Dix.
The charges against the man were dismissed. He later won a lawsuit for malicious prosecution and false imprisonment. Number 8, the disappearance of Robin Abrams, conflict of interest. In October 1990, Robin Abrams was scheduled to appear at a hearing for a wrongful termination lawsuit she filed against the Will County Sheriff's Office in Illinois. But just 18 days before the hearing, Abrams vanished.
He was going home, and she was going out possibly for the evening. She was 28. They didn't ask her, every time she went somewhere, where, what, and when. That was the last time he seen her.
Her locked car was found abandoned. Years before she disappeared, Abrams was a sheriff's deputy. During that time, she had an affair with her married co-worker Anthony Marquez. When the relationship ended, Abrams was fired. Abrams filed a complaint against Marquez, stating he'd slashed her tires.
He hounded my sister. I have 103 reports of harassment from him.
And what does that tell you?
Tells me he was after my sister, like a fatal attraction.
Marquez later filed a complaint claiming Abrams harassed him. The accusations continued until Abrams got an order of protection against Marquez. Despite the conflict of interest, the Will County Sheriff's Office initially handled the case, bringing the integrity of the investigation into question.
The most difficult part is trusting a law authority that said they were doing their best.
Number 7, the mysterious death of Yic Crown. Accidental death ruling delayed investigation. In January 2013, the lifeless body of Yic Crown was found lying face down in the hallway of her home in Wisbech, Cambridgeshire, England. Police concluded her death was a tragic accident. Crown's family questioned this determination, but ultimately accepted it. Just 2 days later, Crown's autopsy indicated she had been murdered. Police launched an official murder investigation, but by that point, the crime scene was contaminated. Officers on the scene had touched light switches, doorknobs, and other surfaces. Additionally, because police assumed her death was an accident, no care was taken to preserve evidence. Numerous people had been permitted to enter the property, and someone even mopped the floor. Over a decade later, the case is still open, but no suspects have ever emerged. Number 6. The mysterious death of Tiffany Valiente. Mishandled key evidence. Tiffany Valiente was a gifted athlete. Her talent on the volleyball court earned her several scholarships, which she'd recently accepted. Before beginning college in the fall, Valiente was enjoying summer with her friends and family in Mays Landing, New Jersey. On the evening of July 12, 2015, she attended a party but never returned home.
I still lay in bed at night waiting for her to get off work from Wawa, she should be pulling in any time.
Later that night, she was struck and killed by a New Jersey transit train 4 miles from her home. The New Jersey Transit Authority swiftly determined that she had taken her own life and closed the case.
So many things did not add up, and the investigation seemed incomplete and sloppy. They felt the whole case was mishandled, and Tiffany was the victim of a kidnapping and murder.
Later, it was discovered that the authorities had mishandled key evidence, hindering all further investigation. Valiente's shirt was improperly stored, and an axe found near the scene was lost. Questions continue to swirl around the case.
Her spirit's here. It's still here until she rests in peace and somebody finds out what happened to her.
Number 5. The Sydney Ghost Train Fire. Prematurely cleared the fire site. In the 1970s, Luna Park, Sydney was one of Australia's most popular amusement parks. A top attraction in the park was the Ghost Train. The disorienting ride took passengers through a dark, winding tunnel full of spine-chilling special effects. Night after night, park-goers enjoyed the thrilling ride. But on June 9, 1979, something went terribly wrong. Multiple people noticed an odd smell and what looked like real fire.
We decided to have a second go in the ghost train, and as we were in there, I could distinctly smell the kerosene burning.
Soon, flames enveloped the ride, trapping several passengers inside. 7 people perished. The exact cause was unclear. However, the lead investigator quickly ruled out arson and concluded faulty wiring was to blame.
But within just half a day, the police hastily wrote the fire off as an electrical fault and bulldozed the scene.
The scene was cleared, leaving many questions unanswered and obliterating any chance of further investigation. Official handling of the case has been heavily criticized.
There was so much buried, so many facts distorted and hidden.
Number 4. The Boys on the Tracks. Accidental death ruling delayed investigation. Don Henry and Kevin Ives were typical high schoolers. However, on August 23, 1987, the friends met a fate that was anything but ordinary. Just before dawn, a train engineer spotted 2 figures, later identified as Henry and Ives, lying motionless on the tracks ahead.
Train engineers say they saw the teens stretched over the tracks, a rifle nearby. They tried to stop, but couldn't.
He initiated an emergency stop, but bringing the 6,000-pound cargo train to a halt was impossible. The medical examiner ruled their deaths accidental, concluding they were in a deep sleep caused by exceptionally high levels of THC.
The state medical examiner at the time, Dr. Fahmy Malik, ruled the teens smoked 20 marijuana joints, then fell asleep on the tracks.
The ruling was overturned after second autopsies revealed one of the boys was dead before being struck, and the other was unconscious. Sadly, the initial accidental death ruling compromised the investigation. Few leads ever surfaced, turning the unusual case into an enduring mystery.
Who covered up their deaths? Many believe it points to a possible drug ring, political corruption, and 2 teens in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Number 3. The Black Dahlia. Attempt to force a confession led to a lawsuit. The grisly 1947 murder of Elizabeth Short is one of the most notorious cold cases in American history. Dubbed the Black Dahlia by the media because of her dark hair and affinity for black clothing, Short was a young, aspiring actress.
She was a young woman who left her home to come find fame and fortune, maybe, in Los Angeles.
The case was heavily publicized. By most accounts, the LAPD put extensive effort into solving the case, conducting numerous interviews and identifying multiple suspects. However, they faced intense public pressure to capture the killer.
Police and reporters try to get a lead on Beth's life, but the more they dig in, the more of a mystery she becomes.
When they narrowed in on Leslie Dillon, investigators were certain he was responsible. Trying to force a confession from Dylan, the LAPD's gangster squad illegally detained him. In response, Dylan filed a lawsuit against the department. The case ultimately landed in front of a grand jury and then went cold.
The Elizabeth Short mystery carries on to this day because nobody's been caught.
Number 2, the Zodiac Killer. Inaccurate description allowed suspect to elude capture. The self-named Zodiac Killer held Northern California in a state of terror in the late 1960s. The serial killer taunted police by sending multiple letters and ciphers to the local press.
The killer contacts local press. He includes a strange 3-part coded message or cipher.
Zodiac eluded authorities for a year before narrowly escaping capture in 1969. After shooting San Francisco taxi driver Paul Stein, Zodiac was able to flee the scene because the physical description provided to police officers over dispatch was wrong.
That they may have said something like, the man's wearing a black jacket or black pants. And somehow the dispatcher misheard this and then repeated they were looking for a black man instead of a white man.
This mistake enabled Zodiac to walk directly by 2 police officers who unwittingly allowed the killer to escape. Investigators did not connect the shooting to Zodiac until the San Francisco Chronicle received a letter from the killer bragging about the murder and his close brush with the officers. Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. Number 1. The murder of Benet Ramsey. Failed to secure crime scene. On Christmas Day 1996, Benet Ramsey was found dead in the basement of her family's home in Boulder, Colorado.
We have a kidnapping. Hurry, please explain to me what's going on. Are you Kathy Ramsey? I'm the mother.
The case sparked a media frenzy and generated worldwide attention. For decades, investigators and amateur sleuths have tried to unravel the mystery of who killed the child beauty queen. Unfortunately, the initial investigation is riddled with errors. The most critical mistake occurred as soon as the police arrived. They failed to secure the crime scene.
The police should have secured that scene by telling everybody, get out. I'm sorry, this is a crime scene.
Police also neglected to take statements from Benet's parents right away, even though they were behaving in a manner the officers considered unusual.
They didn't want to talk to the police. They lawyered up right away.
The Ramseys agreed to give handwriting, hair, and blood samples. Still, they refused formal interviews with the police.
A series of additional mistakes followed. The Boulder police acknowledged these early errors. However, the investigation suffered as a result, and the case remains unsolved. Do you know of another bungled investigation into an unsolved mystery? Let us know in the comments.
I want them to do their job. That's what our tax dollars are paying for.